Lake Laogai kicks off the final act of Earth. Team Avatar tries to recover Appa by dropping leaflets all over the city, even though Judy, the original, who insists that she just spontaneously took a short vacation, says that it's against the law to do so without permission. Well, Aang's had enough bullshit and tells her they're going to find Appa no matter what, putting them now directly at odds with the Dai Li. It also announces their presence to Zuko. Life's been going relatively well for them. Iroh's tea has been making him such a big hit that he's now offered his own tea shop and an apartment in the upper ring of Ba Sing Se. For refugees, that's a dream come true. But it's not the life that Zuko wants. He's been doing well, all things considered, not using his bending, doing his work without incident. But the knowledge that Aang is in the city, and without Appa as a means of escape, just starts the wheels turning again. Next thing you know, he's in the blue spirit getup and captures a guard. Jet also finds a flyer and tracks down Katara, who's unhappy to see him, but he insists that he's changed and just wants to help, that he's seen Appa and can help them out with that. So they go to a big warehouse where Appa's fur is seen, and the sweeper says that they shipped him out for Whaletail Island, basically the other side of the world, and without Appa it's going to take forever for them to get there. But they're going to have to, of course, or else they're not Team Avatar anymore, they're just variously oddly dressed people with a lemur. But Jay and Silent Bob appear, worried over what happened with the Dai Li getting a hold of Jet, but Jet has no idea what they're talking about. He's been brainwashed, and they're using him in the hopes of getting Aang out of the city on some wild goose chase, or whatever chimera they have involving geese. They jog his memory and find out about the brainwashing done at Lake Laogai, where...
I'm Judy. Welcome to Ba Sing Se.
Where creepiness with a smile is always on the menu. But it looks like there might have been layers to Jet's brainwashing, because the room he takes them to is filled with Dai Li, and Long Feng himself is present. It's an unlikely coincidence, especially the way they were all waiting in an ambush position. So a fight naturally breaks out, and when Aang refuses to just leave Ba Sing Se with Appa, because, after all, Long Feng is just a Fire Lord with earthbending, a tyrant of a different kind. So Long Feng uses the control he has to make Jet fight Aang. During all this, Zuko has used his information from the guard to get to Appa, but Iroh has trailed him there, and for the first time starts yelling at him. That he doesn't think shit through, he just acts and figures he'll work it all out later. Finally, he gets all Babylon 5 on him.
It's time for you to look inward and begin asking yourself the big questions. Who are you? And what do you want?
And in the end, Zuko decides to free Appa, who helps Team Avatar escape the Dai Li, allowing for a happy reunion. But that's short-lived, because there's still the matter of dealing with the Fire Nation, and that means talking to the Earth King, and also telling him what's going on with the Dai Li, too. Plus, it's a chance for Aang to really show off his stuff. He not only has his airbending, but easily handles earth and water bending as they face off against the King's guards. Aang has in some ways been hardened by these experiences, facing numerous pitfalls and losses and grief. When he attacks, it is with nothing more than the clear focus on the task, nothing else. They get inside, and naturally the king takes some convincing. Long Feng is his advisor, after all. But the bite mark from Appa proves at least that Long Feng is lying about some things, so the king agrees to investigate. Long Feng's covered up Lake Laogai, but he can't cover up the drill, and the king has him arrested and agrees to join in the invasion of the Fire Nation during the eclipse. During this, Zuko's passed out from fever, having strange visions. Iroh explains that his decision and his self-image are in such conflict that they are taking a physical toll, that he is now going to have to resolve this in order to get better. In one of his hallucinations, he thinks he wakes up and goes to splash water on his face, only to see that he is devoid of his scar, instead his head shaven and bearing the tattoo of the air nomads. Its meaning will be fully realized once we get to Fire. Back in the capital, letters are passed out. The note from the guru at the air temple, a letter from Toph's mom in the city, and news of where Sokka and Katara's father's fleet is. Katara generously offers to let Sokka go to join him while she stays behind to work with the Earth King, and the others go to check out their letters. Things are finally working out for our heroes.
Everything is gonna work out perfectly. From now on and forever.
Oh, Sokka! You should know better than to tempt the gods of irony. Because the first thing we learn is that the Dai Li is still loyal to Long Feng, that the letter from Toph's mom was actually from the bounty hunters who trap her in a metal cage, and that the Kyoshi warriors who arrived to meet with the king are not Suki and her cohorts, but Azula, Mai, and Pinkie Pie. Why so serious, your majesty?
My most trusted advisor, Long Feng, and his Dai Li agents tried to take control of Ba Sing Se from me.
It's terrible when you can't trust the people who are closest to you.
But there is good news. As we speak, the Council of Five is meeting to plan an invasion of the Fire Nation this summer, on the day of a solar eclipse.
Can't catch a break. Aang meets up with the Guru, who says that he can help Aang finally control the Avatar state, but it involves unblocking his chakras. I assume with some kind of prune juice. There are 7 chakras he must open, related to parts of the body and the emotions, as well as ascending the color spectrum. It's a lot of Hindu and Buddhist teaching, something I admit I'm not familiar enough with to discuss. But the episode lays out how Aang is each blocked because of something he must learn to change, such as replacing guilt at the loss of his people with knowledge that their love for him still exists. It's at this final chakra when Aang stumbles, where he must let go of what ties him to the world in order to unblock this one. But that means losing his connection to Katara.
What? Why would I let go of Katara? I love her.
Learn to let her go.
This is his Yoda moment. He says something similar in episode 3 to Anakin, and of course that advice worked out so well, didn't it? The tie to Katara here is particularly appropriate for Earth. In the first episode, he entered the Avatar state because he feared Katara was dead. And in the desert, he exited it because of her holding on to him. In both cases, his love for her was tied to that state. And yet now, he is expected to let go of her completely to have the ability to do both of those on his own. He tries, but in the final moments, like when Yoda was training Luke in Empire, Aang has a vision of Katara in danger, and likewise abandons his training so he can go and rescue her. But there is good news of a sort. Toph has found a way to see metal as the refined earth that it is, and develops a new technique, metal bending, to escape and lock her captors in the cage.
I'm going to be stuck in here forever with you, aren't I?
I have to go to the bathroom.
And Sokka's father has developed a kind of anti-ship mine that's been keeping the Fire Nation ships at bay. But that's about where it ends. Katara's locked up because she saw Zuko and Iroh at the tea shop and assumed the worst, so she rushed in and told it to Azula, thinking that she was Suki. With her manipulating the situation so that the Dai Li are trying to use her against the Earth King, she can now use them to bring the 2 fugitives right to the palace for capture. And just after Zuko had found peace with himself and was working happily with his uncle. Okay, Zuko, I admit it, that is life just kicking your ass. They're brought to the palace on the pretense of serving this famous tea to the king himself, but the Dai Li ambush them. Iroh escapes, but Zuko insists on fighting Azula once and for all. That whole thinking things through that Iroh mentioned, I really hoped that would have sunk in. Iroh has no place to turn now, so he heads to Toph, Sokka, and Aang and asks that they work together to rescue Katara and Zuko. Toph trusts him because of their previous talk, and the others can't be picky about help right now, so they grudgingly agree to join forces. But when Azula takes the king hostage, Sokka and Toph have no choice but to surrender, leaving the Dai Li in charge. But who's in charge of the Dai Li? In the end, Azula is because of sheer force of personality, meaning that the Fire Nation has now conquered Ba Sing Se without a single soldier. In setting up this perfect city shielded from the war, the Dai Li created a system to ensure that there is no war in here after all. There is a transition of power from earth to fire with one bent knee. Meanwhile, Katara is starting to realize that Zuko really has changed, and she brings the spirit water from the beginning of Earth back to the viewers' minds by considering that maybe she could use it to cure his scar. But before she does, Aang and Iroh arrive. But after Aang and Katara go to help the Earth King, Azula arrives with some of the Dai Li, and we see another of Zuko's hallucinations played out for real. In one of the visions, 2 dragons were speaking to him with the voices of Azula and Iroh, urging him to choose one way or another. Now as Zuko stands at what his uncle calls the Crossroads of Destiny, both are again urging him down a path. It is again symbolized by showing one half of Zuko's face and then the other, that he is of 2 minds on the topic. But Azula offers what he's been chasing for so long, restoration of honor and a place at his father's side again. Temptation is too great for him, and Zuko chooses to side with Azula and abandon his uncle. It bookends Earth. In the Avatar state, he abandoned his uncle with the promise of returning home, and now, even after all he has been through, he does the same thing all over again. It's a fairly even fight, all things considered. I mean, Azula is a prodigy and all that, but Katara is a master and Aang is the Avatar. And no offense, but Zuko can't handle a lot of the advanced firebending stuff without it exploding in his face. But it seems that his desperation is making him more dangerous than ever. But it doesn't really matter, because once an army of Daili show up, Aang knows that the only option now is to enter the Avatar state. So he cocoons himself in crystal so he can unlock the final chakra. The sight of him inside the crystals is reminiscent of how he looked in The Boy in the Iceberg, when he locked himself away because he wanted to escape his destiny. But now he must fully embrace it, even if that means abandoning his feelings for Katara. But in so doing, he's caught unprepared when Azula hits him with lightning through the heart, and Aang dies. No, really, he dies. Iroh arrives and buys her some time in order to get Aang's dead remains to safety. Whatever. And once they're safe, he surrenders. And after all that the two have been through, this is the moment when Iroh looks on his nephew with shame. Katara remembers the spirit water and uses it on Aang's wound, restoring him back to life as Team Avatar plus the Earth King and his bear escape, continuing the Empire Strikes Back parallel, with the hero's victory really boiling down to just escaping the grasp of the enemy. But that does call back to Aang beseeching the guerrillas of Omashu that sometimes the thing you have to do is retreat to fight another day when you're really needed. That's what they're doing here, escaping the conquered Earth Kingdom to rally forces for their counterattack against the Fire Nation itself, which we'll look at in our next Avatar review, Fire.
All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord!
Oh yeah, and die. Hey, I just remembered the rest of that song.
And die.